even explain it. He's a part of me, and it's just something in there that just yearns to touch him and hold him.
More than anything, Desiree Young just wants to see her son Kyron again. The last time she saw him was almost 14 years ago, disappearing from Skyline Elementary School in Northwest Portland after presenting at a science fair. Kyron was dropped off by his stepmother at the time.
He was 7 years old the last time anyone saw him. Kyron Richard Horman stood in front of his school science fair project, grinning wide beneath his wire-rimmed glasses. His display was about red-eyed tree frogs, colorful and carefully crafted. With facts typed neatly, pictures printed and pasted with care, the title written in bold green letters across the top. He wore a black CSI t-shirt and denim jeans. He was proud of his work, and he was excited. The school hallways at Skyline Elementary were buzzing that morning, June 4th, 2010, full of children and parents, a break from routine as the school opened its doors early to show off the students' science fair exhibits. Kyron arrived at 8 a.m. with his stepmother, Terri. The halls were already filling up. Terri snapped a photo of Kyron standing in front of his display, grinning. That photo would become the last proof of life. Kyron was a second grader. He was shy, gentle, small for his age, but clever. He loved frogs, loved science, loved wearing his little CSI shirts like he was already planning his future. His teachers called him curious. His classmates called him sweet. His family called him monkey. That he lived with his father, Kyron Horman, and his stepmother, Terri, in a two-story house nestled in the hilly outskirts of Portland, Oregon. The house sat in a semi-rural area, with winding roads and thick green trees. Flanking each side, Kyron's mother, Desiree Young, lived in another part of Oregon but remained very involved in his life. She and Kyron had divorced years earlier, and Terri had been raising Kyron since he was 3. They shared custody amicably, if not warmly. To most who knew them, they seemed like a functioning blended family. But on that June morning, something went wrong. Terri told police that after walking Kyron through the science fair displays, she left the school around 8:45 a.m. She said she last saw him walking toward his classroom. But Kyron never made it to class. His homeroom teacher marked him absent. No one noticed, not at first. The science fair had made the morning chaotic. There were parents and kids everywhere. The day continued. The teachers assumed he had left. With his stepmom, Terri claimed she spent the rest of the morning running errands, first to a Fred Meyer's store, then driving her infant daughter around for a nap. But that was it. No one else saw Kyron leave. No surveillance captured him after 8:45 a.m. He simply vanished inside the walls of his own elementary school. It wasn't until 3:30 p.m. that anyone noticed he was missing. The school called Kyron and Terri to ask why Kyron hadn't been picked up. That was when the panic began. Kyron called 911. Police were dispatched immediately to Skyline Elementary. A search was launched within the hour. The school was locked down. Teachers, janitors, and parents were questioned. But it was already too late. Kyron was gone. He was 7 years old, and he had vanished from his own school in broad daylight. Skyline Elementary sat on a ridge overlooking the thick Oregon woods, a place so quiet that most people left their doors unlocked. The idea that a child could go missing from inside the school without anyone seeing or hearing a thing was unthinkable. And yet, by the end of June 4th, 2010, it was undeniable. Kyron Horman was gone. Search crews arrived that afternoon. First a few local officers, then more, and soon, helicopters, dogs, horses, ATVs. They combed the school and its surroundings. They examined every classroom, closet, and crawl space. They searched cars in the parking lot, checked ravines behind the building, wandered trails thick with bramble and moss. But the forest was vast, the terrain complex. Skyline was perched on the edge of wildness. If someone had taken Kyron and slipped into the woods, they could be gone for miles without a trace. The community responded fast. Flyers were printed with Kyron's face. The last photo, taken that morning, with his small smile and bright eyes. Missing, 7 years old. Last seen June 4th, 10. Hundreds of volunteers showed up to help search. Local news stations led with the story. A task force was formed by the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. National agencies joined in. The FBI called it one of the largest search operations in Oregon history. And still, nothing. No clothes. No backpack. No body. No signs of a struggle. It was as if Kyron had dissolved into air. Terri Horman, Kyron's stepmother, became the focus of early scrutiny, quietly at first, and then with sharp intensity. Police began examining her story. She said she left the school around 8:45 a.m. and went to a Fred Meyer store to buy medication for her daughter. But surveillance footage from the store showed her entering much later than she claimed. She was seen wandering the aisles, not buying anything urgent, not behaving like someone with a tight schedule. Then she said she drove her baby around to help her nap. But investigators couldn't verify that stretch of time. The gaps in her timeline raised red flags. Then there was the polygraph. Terri took 2 polygraph tests within days of Kyron's disappearance. According to multiple sources, she failed both. Law enforcement never publicly confirmed the results, but the leak was immediate. Her behavior under scrutiny appeared off, not distraught, not desperate, and soon the public's eyes began to narrow on her. At home, things deteriorated fast. Kyron Horman, once quiet and composed, suddenly filed for divorce just 3 weeks after Kyron vanished. He cited irreconcilable differences and requested a restraining order, claiming he believed Terri was involved in their son's disappearance. The court documents, unsealed later, painted a disturbing picture. Among the most damning, a man named Rodolfo Sanchez, a landscaper who had worked at the Horman home, told police that Terri had approached him 6 months earlier asking if he could take care of Kyron, implying she wanted her husband dead. She allegedly offered him money to kill Kyron. At first, investigators thought it was absurd, but then they learned that Terri had also failed a polygraph on questions relating to that murder-for-hire plot. The pieces were starting to fall into a picture that no one wanted to see. While search teams raked the woods and divers scoured nearby water reservoirs, investigators turned inward, into the halls of the Horman home, into Terri's daily life, her phone calls, her texts. What they found didn't look like a grieving stepmother. In the days after Kyron vanished, Terri posted to Facebook casual, smiling updates. One status read, "Hitting the gym tomorrow. Been way too long." It was posted just 6 days after Kyron disappeared. Another photo showed her smiling with her infant daughter, Kira. It was the kind of content people post when life is normal. But Kyron was still missing, and the city was watching. The post triggered a public backlash. Thousands of commenters accused her of being cold, heartless, hiding something. But it wasn't just the public turning against her. Behind closed doors, Kyron Horman was unraveling the woman he thought he knew. The moment police told him about the murder-for-hire allegation, he packed a bag and left the house. He took Kiera with him and filed for a restraining order. In the documents, Kyron claimed police had shown him evidence that Terri was involved in Kyron's disappearance and that she was now the target of an active criminal investigation. And yet, no arrest. That was what baffled the public. If police suspected Terri, why not charge her? But law enforcement was playing a longer game. They had flipped one of Terri's closest friends, Dee Spiker, a woman who had spent time with Terri in the weeks after Kyron vanished. Dee had reportedly left work abruptly the day Kyron went missing and refused to let officers search her car. She became a person of interest, though she was never named as a suspect. Investigators believe she might have helped Terri cover something up. They watched her closely at the same time. Law enforcement tried something bold, a sting operation. Working with Kyron and Desiree, they orchestrated a plan to get Terri to confess. The hope was that if they pressed hard enough, cornered her emotionally and legally, she would crack. They brought in undercover officers posing as friends, manipulated her access to her daughter, and monitored her every move. But she never broke. No confession, no slip-up, just silence. Months passed. The media cycle stretched on, then began to flicker. The flyers faded. The number of volunteers dropped. But still, the search for Kyron continued, draining millions of dollars, hundreds of hours, dozens of square miles. No body, no evidence, no resolution. Kyron's mother, Desiree Young, remained relentless. She appeared on every major news outlet. She held press conferences with Kyron's stuffed animals beside her. She begged Terri publicly to cooperate. In one emotional statement, she said, "We are closer than we've ever been to finding out the truth." But no truth came. By late 2010, the trail was growing cold. By early 2011, it had been nearly a year since Kyron vanished. No arrests, no charges, no new evidence. But the Horman family wasn't waiting anymore. Desiree Young, Kyron's biological mother, filed a $10 million civil lawsuit against Terri Horman in June 2012. The lawsuit didn't accuse her of murder, but of intentional infliction of emotional distress and wrongful custodial interference. It was the most direct move yet, a legal declaration that she believed Terri was responsible for her son's disappearance. It wasn't about money. It was about forcing Terri into court, forcing her to testify, to be under oath, to speak. But Terri refused. She invoked the Fifth Amendment, not once, not twice, but more than 70 times during her deposition. She wouldn't answer questions about the morning Kyron disappeared, her interactions with police, or even her own cell phone records. It was her constitutional right, but it painted a picture, one of silence, evasion, and possible guilt. Public sentiment shifted further. Terri was no longer just the woman under suspicion. She was the woman refusing to fight for the boy she helped raise. She left Oregon in 2013 and moved south, first to Roseburg, then out of state entirely. She changed her name briefly to Terri Moulton and kept a low profile. But trouble seemed to follow. In the years that followed, she racked up traffic violations, domestic disturbances, and even arrests in California and Nevada. The woman who once stood with Kyron at his school science fair was now tangled in a string of courtrooms, mugshots, and new aliases. Still, law enforcement held back. No charges, no arrests. When asked why, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office would always give the same careful response. The investigation is active and ongoing. But Kyron's parents were growing tired of waiting. Desiree never stopped. She appeared at every anniversary vigil, held public events, raised reward money, at one point topping $50,000 for any information leading to Kyron. She held press conferences where she looked directly into the camera and said Terri's name. "You were the last person to see my son. You know what happened? Come forward. End this." Kane, more reserved, echoed the call. He said he believed Kyron was either killed that day or hidden by someone who knew how to avoid detection. He urged Terri to do the right thing. But she never did. As the years passed, the story of Kyron Horman became a haunting symbol in Oregon, of how a child can vanish in the space between minutes, how justice can stall in the absence of hard evidence, and how suspicion doesn't always lead to conviction. His face stayed on billboards across the Pacific Northwest. His age-progressed images, showing him as 10, 12, then 15, circulated online and in missing person databases. But the original photo never left the public's mind. The one where he stood in front of his frog project, smiling through his glasses. The boy who loved science. The boy who never came home. By 2020, 10 years had passed since Kyron walked into Skyline Elementary and never came back out. A decade of billboards. A decade of silence. A decade of wondering if he had died that morning, or if somewhere, somehow, he might still be alive. The anniversary brought with it a resurgence of media coverage. Local and national outlets revisited the case. Kane and Desiree gave interviews, more tired than angry now, their grief sharpened by time. "It's been 10 years, Kane said to the press. "We don't just want justice anymore. We want answers." Desiree stood beside him, her voice trembling. "I still wake up thinking maybe he'll walk through the door. I still wait for a knock. I still believe someone knows what happened. I still believe it was Terri." The Multnomah County Sheriff's Office confirmed publicly that the case was still active. Over 4,000 tips had been reviewed. They had followed leads as far as Texas and Mexico. But no arrests. No suspects named. The FBI confirmed they had conducted behavioral analysis and forensic review, but did not release details. What they did say was chilling. That Kyron's disappearance, they said, was likely not random. Someone familiar with the school. Someone who knew Kyron. Someone who had access. Over the years, theories emerged like fog. Thick, confusing, hard to hold on to. Theory 1. The crime of opportunity. That Kyron left the classroom for the restroom and was lured outside by someone. Maybe someone pretending to be a school official. But this raised problems. No one reported seeing a stranger. There was no surveillance footage. No sign of a struggle. Theory 2. A family crime. The most painful theory, and the one law enforcement seemed to support, was that someone inside the family circle was involved. That Kyron may have never left the school grounds alive. That his body was Hidden. That someone covered their tracks with chilling precision. Theory 3. Kyron is alive. That Terri or someone else arranged to have Kyron taken, not killed, and hidden elsewhere. A black market adoption, a secret placement, a long game meant to punish Cain or Desiree. But without a shred of proof, this theory drifted into the realm of hope, not evidence. Over time, the noise faded. The media moved on. But Cain and Desiree did not. Cain kept a section of Kyron's bedroom preserved. Desiree kept organizing search efforts, fundraising, lighting candles every June. Neither remarried. Neither left Oregon.in interviews. Cain admitted he kept his phone ringer on at night, just in case. He said he dreamed of Kyron often, but only as a 7-year-old. Time and dreams had stopped. Terri Horman, now living under a new name in California, stayed mostly silent. She did one interview in 2016 with Dr. Phil. She denied involvement. She said she had nothing to do with Kyron's disappearance, that she had been framed by Cain and law enforcement, that the media had destroyed her life. She said she loved Kyron, but her voice cracked in strange places. She did not cry. She showed no pictures. She could not explain the timeline gaps. And she still refused to say where she had been between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. on June 4th, 2010. Viewers watched. The internet exploded. And then she disappeared again. To this day, Kyron Horman is the longest-running missing child case in Oregon history. No body, no confession, no justice. Only a photograph. A smiling boy, standing proudly beside a project about frogs, frozen in time.